right? So we happen to have multiple roles that overlap, right? So the three obvious ones that come to mind is that there is, as of a few months ago, a new chief data officer that was hired. So clearly this is data, so somehow that person would be involved. Now there is a chief research information officer who has built an entire data warehouse for research and clinical trials. So that person will definitely have to be involved. Then there is a CIO who may or may not be involved, to be quite honest, but technically most places they will be involved. Here they may not be. And then there's just the data use agreement, so that's the partners licensing and innovation team that does commercialization or data use agreements for material transfer of data around licenses and IP. And they would be the one actually signing the contract. So I think there at least, and then there may be sort of the CEO and the business suite that care about like what's the business value of some of this stuff. But even if you set that aside for a second, you have at least 2 to 3 different data and IS people, plus a licensing manager or sort of partner commercialization, sort of IP legal stuff. And then there may be sort of a business or academic person that says, okay, this is a clinical trial, so what's the use of it, what's the business value of it? So that's a place like this. In a smaller health system, there may be a few less people, but those are the people that come to mind that would sort of at least touch this thing before it gets out the door.
All right. So kind of trying to answer one of your earlier questions of what would be the value proposition to a participating organization. On slide 6 here, we have 3 potential messaging pillars of what those benefits might be. So there's reduction in clinical practice disruption relative to the trials. There's providing access to new therapies, improving operational efficiencies, and then increasing downstream patient services volumes and revenue. And then finally, in no particular order, establishing a claim and reputation. What would be some of your initial reactions to these? Which ones resonate with you and why?
So I think the ones that resonate, and I'll comment on why I think they're appropriate or not appropriate in a second, but the ones that resonate are probably the top 3. I don't know about the increasing downstream patient revenue stuff, is all that. I don't know about that. A claim and reputation clearly may matter depending on where you are and how much you want to put your name out there as a site that recruits a ton of clinical patients for future trials. It could turn into a revenue stream for sure. In a place like here, that's a little less of a concern because actually we're not the best in clinical trials, but we have a good brand. Clinical trials, there are other centers that do better than us, so we could use some of that, but it's less of a concern. So the top 3 do make sense. Now the question, and I forgot to mention this earlier, I don't know if that's 100% true because one of the things, and this depends on the IRB, but one of the things our IRB always asks us for is this issue that you cannot contact patients unless their primary provider approves you to contact them. Now, that may be an MGH practice, but I think it may not be. So one thing to think about when you think about national data sets of databases of patient names and lists, commercial for-profit entities can do that very easily because they've given approval for the company to contact them. In a health system, unless you've contacted the patient and asked their permission, you probably just can't reach out. At least our IRB doesn't allow us to do that. So that just makes me think, how do you reduce clinical disruption because you still have to go through the PI, unless this platform said we have a mechanism, and we're trying to build this at MGH now, a mechanism by which we actually a priori get the patients to sort of approve any research and say, in the future, we'll just contact you. But then they may get bombarded by 20 different things. So I think something to keep in mind in terms of translation of a concept into practical reality that may come up as a barrier if they haven't thought through that yet. How do you actually contact people?
The point is that at the point of care, there would be the option to consent right there, so the physician would be involved with the approval theoretically, as I understand it. Does that help?
Yeah, and that's something that it helps totally, and we've done some of that as well. And I think that's something to think through.